McCartney, and I'm here to talk about speech-language impairments. First, we're going to start off with the objectives. What is a speech-language impairment? What are some characteristics of a speech-language impairment? What are the educational implications? The IDEA requirements, teaching strategies, related services, assistive technology, tips for teachers, and lastly, we're going to wrap up with a list of resources. So what is a speech-language impairment? A speech-language impairment can be broken down into 4 different categories. First, articulation, where the child produces the sounds incorrectly. Second is fluency. The child's flow of speech is distorted by sounds, syllables, and words that are repeated, prolonged, or avoided, and where they may be silent blocks or inappropriate inhalation, exhalation, or phonation patterns. Third is voice. The child's voice has an abnormal quality, pitch, resonance, or loudness. And lastly, language. The child has problems expressing needs, ideas, or information, and/or in understanding what others say. The IDEA definition of a speech-language impairment is: speech or language impairment means a communication disorder such as stuttering, impaired articulation, a language impairment, or a voice impairment that adversely affects a child's educational performance. You may be asking yourself, what are some characteristics of a speech-language impairment? First, in articulation. An articulation impairment can have distorted sound, which it makes it hard for people to understand what the child is saying. It also can have changed sounds, where you substitute sounds for other sounds. For example, W for R in the word rabbit. Lots of people refer to articulation impairments as speech impediments. In the fluency section, according to projectidealonline.org, a fluency disorder means that something is disrupting the rhythmic and forward flow of speech, usually a stutter. As a result, the child's speech contains an abnormal number of repetitions, hesitations, prolongations, or disturbances. Tensions may also be seen in the face, neck, shoulders, or fists. In the voice section, projectidealonline.org states that a voice disorder involves problems with the pitch, loudness, resonance, or quality of the voice. The voice may seem hoarse, raspy, or harsh. For some, it may sound quite nasal. Others might seem as if they are stuffed up. People with voice problems often notice changes in pitch, loss of voice, loss of endurance, and sometimes a sharp or dull pain associated with voice use. Lastly, in the language section, as mentioned by projectidealonline.org, a language disorder refers to an impaired ability to understand and/or use words in context. A child may have an expressive language disorder, which is difficulty in expressing ideas or needs, a receptive language disorder, which is difficulty in understanding what others are saying, or mixed language disorder, which involves both of those. Children may hear or see a word but not be able to understand its meanings. They may have trouble getting others to understand what they are trying to communicate. These symptoms can easily be mistaken for other disabilities such as autism or learning disabilities. So it's very important to ensure that the child receives a thorough evaluation by a certified speech-language pathologist. What are the educational implications? A speech-language impairment results in a communication disability and can affect the student's ability to do certain things in the classroom. According to the Department of Education, Training, and Employment in Queensland website, speech-language impairments affect the student's ability to understand and express information, relate to others, including teachers and peers, express needs, abilities, and interests, acquire adequate literacy and numeracy skills, participate in group activities, develop a positive self-concept, learn appropriate behavior and social skills, problem solve, and acquire and demonstrate knowledge in key learning areas. The IDEA requirements for speech-language impairment are: first, an individualized educational program, or an IEP. IDEA requires a child who is found to have a disability to be under an IEP. The IEP should be designed specifically for that student. IDEA also requires that an early intervention is available to babies and toddlers with disabilities. It's required that special education and related services be made available free of charge to every eligible child with a disability. Some teaching strategies for students with speech-language impairments are: first, to generalize speech therapy strategies. Help the students incorporate their speech therapy strategies into the general education classroom. You can also use corrective measures. You may also want to use speech and language exercises in the classroom daily. Go over the exercises every day to make sure the correction is a habit. You may also provide feedback to the student. Tell the student whether or not he or she is pronouncing or using the correct language. Related services that are available for children with speech-language impairments are, first of all, speech-language pathologists. Speech-language pathologists diagnose and treat communication and swallowing disorders in patients. There are also special education teachers. Special education teachers work with students who have a wide range of learning, mental, emotional, and physical disabilities. With students who have a mild or moderate disability, they ensure that lessons and teaching strategies are modified to meet the students' needs. With students who have severe disabilities, they teach the students independent living skills and basic literacy, communication, and math. In these services and related services, collaboration is key. Assistive technology to use with children with speech-language impairments can be computer software. There are many computer applications and software to use to help assist students. You can also have augmentative or alternative communication, otherwise known as AAC. Project Ideal Online says that AAC is the use of symbols, aids, strategies, and techniques to enhance the communication process. This includes sign language and various communication boards, both manual and electronic, that are used by individuals with impaired oral motor skills. The most basic AAC devices are non-electric communication boards. The boards usually are limited to a number of choices, from 2 to 4. The choices can be represented by real items, pictures of items, and symbols for items, including print. The objective of the communication board is to have the student make a choice, typically of food or activity. Electronic AAC devices range from very simple devices with few buttons, such as the Cheap Talk, to very elaborate systems that use a keyboard and a synthesized speech, such as the Dynavox or the Liberator. The National Dissemination Center for Children with Disabilities gave a few tips for teachers. First, learn as much as you can about the student's specific disability. Speech-language impairments differ considerably from one another, so it's important to know the specific impairment and how it affects the student's communication abilities. Second is, recognize that you can make an enormous difference in this student's life. Find out what the student's strengths and interests are and emphasize them. Create opportunities for success. Third, if you're not part of the student's IEP team, ask for a copy of his or her IEP. The student's educational goals will be lit there, as well as the services and classroom accommodation he or she is to receive. Additional tips from the National Dissemination Center for Children with Disabilities are: make sure that the needed accommodations are provided for classwork, homework, and testing. These will help the students learn successfully. Next, consult with others such as special educators and speech-language pathologists who can help you identify strategies for teaching and supporting the student, ways to adapt the curriculum, and how to address the student IEP goals in your classroom. Next, find out if your state or school district has materials or resources available to help educators address the learning needs of children with speech or language impairments. It's amazing how many do. Lastly, communicate with the student's parents. Regularly share information about how the student is doing at school and at home.